John 3:13. Et nemo ascendit in caelum, nisi qui descendit de caelo, filius hominis qui est in caelo. And no one, nobody, has gone up into the heavens, or into heaven, except he who has descended from heaven or the heavens, namely the Son of Man who is in heaven or the heavens. This is a relatively straightforward verse. A couple of things we might note are these interesting words, nemo and nisi. Nemo, developed in Latin, it seems from ne homo, literally no person, no human being. You can see the negation there followed by the noun. That should be familiar to you. Contracted, that becomes nemo, nobody. This would be Odysseus' name in Latin in the famous passage where he's tempted to give his name to the Cyclops as he's escaping from the Cyclops' cave, and he says, my name is nobody, oudes in Greek. But if we were giving the passage in Latin, and of course it was translated into Latin in antiquity, we would say, nemo sum, I'm nobody, my name is no one. Et nemo ascendit in caelum, nisi qui descendit. The first thing we want to talk about with these verbs is how to decide what tense they represent. And the reason this is a problem is because both are third conjugation verbs, and the perfect active stem of each doesn't really distinguish the perfect tense from the present in any immediate way. In the present tense, we would have ascendit, he, she, it goes up. And in the perfect tense, following on this perfect stem, we would have also ascendit. But this time, he, she, it went up in the past. And we have the same ambiguity, in fact, with descendit. So how do we tell the difference? How do we know when we've got the present or the perfect form of the verb? Well, I'm sure you're all probably muttering this under your breath already. Generally, context is key, but even in situations where context might not help us, as here, there's nothing sort of inherently obvious about the sentence that would help us decide. Fortunately, because we're talking about a translation, when we talk about the Latin Vulgate, we can have recourse to the Greek text, look at the perfect tenses that we find there for the equivalence of these expressions and say, these must have been meant by our Latin translator to represent the perfect tense in Latin as well. So we're going to label those perfect, and we're going to translate them that way. No one has gone up or went up. In caelum, here we'll just note in passing, in plus the accusative of motion toward or into something. Nisi qui descendit, except or besides he who went down. A couple quick things to note here. Nisi in situations like this is best translated not if not, which is how nisi is best translated in situations where we have a true conditional sentence in Latin. Here, when we've got a negative or negated clause preceding it, it's enough usually just to say except or besides or other than. We might say in this case, no one has gone up into heaven besides or except qui. And we've noticed this before. We can do this with relative pronouns. We can just use a relative pronoun without an expressly given antecedent. We might expect to see is or illa or something like that here. Illa qui, he who, that person who did such and such. But it's not actually necessary. We can just drop the pronoun, save some space and time, and simply use the relative pronoun by itself. Very common in the Latin of all periods. It's just sort of a shortcut. You can think of it that way. Except he who has gone down or has come down, de caelo, from heaven, de plus the ablative case there, of course, is unremarkable. Namely, and here in English we would probably add this kind of punctuation, namely, the Son of Man, filius hominis, qui est in caelo.